Today you are working on your relevant application, which is your toy car lab for this class period. So you have the whole period to use that time as you see fit. If you've done a lot of your lab at home, you might be nearly finished. That's awesome. You might not need the whole period to work on it, and maybe you can instead spend some time on playlist 2, which is due tonight by 11:59 p.m. Okay, so you've got a couple of things coming up. Your lab, the RA, is due on Friday. Okay, now we do have the option for you to turn in your lab tomorrow for feedback, and we'll make notes on it or talk to you about some of the things on there and hand it back to you. But you don't have to turn it in then. You can wait until Friday, and that's perfectly fine because that's the due date. But you do have a more pressing due date with playlist 2 due by 11:59 p.m. tonight. But for today, the goal is that you are working on the RA. You have data analysis part 1 and part 2. And so if you look at the toy car lab, the paper itself, underneath, really it's on the back of the first page, bless you, you can see that you have a graph here, and I think most of you guys have probably already graphed the data that you collected. If not, then definitely be working on that today. But underneath that graph that you draw by hand, there's a second graph that you have to do in Google Sheets, and that's what it says, Data Analysis Part 2. You will create a position versus time graph using Google Sheets, and you will analyze the trend line to obtain the answer to the lab's question. Share a link with the file in the assignment on Schoology. So if you end up plotting data here, you're going to plot the data here as well. If you need to linearize anything, then you can do that down here, because in order for you to be able to communicate what that relationship is between those variables of position and time, for example, or maybe you did pullback distance and then how fast the car went, whatever it was you chose. In order to be able to fully explain the data, you're going to want to linearize a graph if it's not linear. Okay, so I don't have your data in front of me. I don't know what it looks like, but again, that may apply to you, and you can do that in Google Sheets in Data Analysis Part 2. Okay, fairly easy to graph in Google Sheets, but if you're not super comfortable with it, there is a video. Let me go ahead and switch my screen real quick, because we did post a video in the Schoology course. So when you log in to the AP Physics 1 Schoology course and you go down, there is a folder here that says Labs inside of this Unit 1 folder. If you open it up or you expand it that way, either way works. There is a link here to a graphing with Google Sheets, and it should, let me see if it opens, make sure, but it should take you to a video. I think my computer's being really slow, but that's here, and then this is your lab analysis part 2. So let me try to launch it in a new window. I may have to re-upload it if it's not working. Okay, so it's not loading in frame, but it is opening in a new window. Okay, I don't know why that is, but if it does this to you and it gives you the same error, click this button to open it in a new window. But here is a Google Sheet walking you through how to get this graphed in Google Sheets using the graphing tool that's built into that software. So that's there, and then the other thing that's there in your lab folder is regarding Data Analysis Part 2. Oops, didn't mean to do that. And it says this should be your own spreadsheet, not a group spreadsheet. Some of you have already turned it in, but you're going to post a link to your spreadsheet. You can attach the spreadsheet itself, but again, whatever it is that you're turning in, especially if it's a link, please make sure that I can see it. And it should be your own spreadsheet, not a group spreadsheet. Everybody has their own file here because, again, your spreadsheet is going to have the graph that you made on it. Now, your graphs are probably going to look the same, but I want every single person to make that graph on their own. I don't want your neighbor to do it for you. Okay, but that's what you're doing for Data Analysis Part 2. So if you haven't done those pieces yet, that is part of this lab. And then once you've done that analysis, then you can focus on writing your explanation. And it is in a claim evidence reasoning format, meaning that your claim, and this is, by the way, all in the rubric, the lab rubric that you guys picked up the other day, I think last week. Your claim needs to basically answer the question that you chose on the first page. If it doesn't, you're not going to get points for it. I don't care how awesome it sounds. The claim has to answer the question that you're testing. Okay, so That'll be in there, and then basically what evidence do you have to support that claim, and then explaining the physics, the reasoning, how you drew that conclusion from that evidence. You'll notice that it's not in that order though. Instead, it's in the order of, hey, here's the evidence I have, here's what I think that means, and thus here is my claim. And so that's the order that it's written back here. So you might be familiar with claim evidence reasoning, but just be aware it is in a little bit of a different order back here, so please follow that. And again, check the lab rubric scoring guidelines to see exactly what we're looking for in here. And then you have one little piece at the end about evaluation, discuss sources of uncertainty and what you did to reduce them. And I don't want, something about how you did a bad job at, doing some part of the data. I'm talking about systematic errors, not personal human error, okay? So make sure you think of different things, just constraints of the experiment itself or the tools that I gave you, not I'm bad at measuring things, not that, okay? So just keep that in mind whenever you're writing that at the end. So again, back in here, playlist 2 right here, you have task options and a checkpoint that are due by 11:59 p.m. if you haven't done these things yet. And then your lab folder in here is where you're going to find the things I was just talking about. Here's where you turn in, again, analysis part 2 is where you turn in your sheet. And then if you need help on making the sheet in the first place, there is a link to a video. Okay, so that is what you are working on today. The due date for your lab. All of your labs must be turned in on paper. Okay, so you're not turning this in digitally. Part of it is digital, obviously, but this is on paper. Okay, and in fact, you have to keep these in a lab binder. That's why one of the required supplies on your syllabus is a binder. Okay, you need to have all of your labs in one place. We actually grade your binder at the end of each semester. And the reason we're making you hold on to these labs is because whenever you take the AP test for this course, those of you that are planning on taking it, which I assume is most of you, if you get a 3 or a 4 or a 5, if you get a score that could earn you college credit, sometimes those colleges want to see your lab notebook to make sure that you had a sufficient amount of lab in the course in order to get credit. So just a heads up, not all universities ask for it, but some of them do, and so we're going to make you hold on to these. This is the first one, but you're going to have multiple labs throughout the year, okay? So keep them in a binder once I pass it back with your grade on it. So again, for the rest of the period today, work on data analysis parts 1 and 2. You can finish the RA in class or for homework. Again, the deadline to turn it in is the 15th on paper, which means it has to be turned in before you leave by 3 p.m. On Friday. If you want feedback prior to that, you can turn it in. You don't have to because you're not going to have it overnight that night, so that is up to you. So I'm going to go ahead and stop talking and let you guys get to work. If you have any questions for me, please let me know.